Today I'm at the Milford Experimental Forest, a special property located in Pike County, Pennsylvania. This property has been protected and preserved for generations by the Pinchot family. It is now protected in part by the Delaware Highlands Conservancy and the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. I'll be conducting a mindful walk here today on this property to further discover this special place and also attune our senses to our natural landscape. My name is Heather Houskeeper. Folks call me the botanical hiker. I'm an herbalist, author, and long-distance hiker, and knowledgeable in our wild plants, both native and non-native, here throughout the region. So I hope you'll join me today. You need not come visit this property. This is something you can do on your own. You can go to a favorite place in the woods, or even maybe just that weedy spot on the edge of your backyard. So mindfulness in nature can be practiced anywhere. To begin our walk today, we're going to practice mindfulness. And we'll do that through a meditation that directly awakens our senses. To tap into our senses is to attune to nature. Our senses evolved with nature, not in isolation. So to tap into those senses can help us to step away for a little bit from that linear thinking, that mental plane, and attune to that part of ourselves that is more directly connected with nature. And to feel that connection helps to not only make us feel good, it's good for our health, but it also can awaken a deeper desire or drive to protect nature and all that is valuable in it, its inhabitants, from plants to animals, and also our valuable resources, to remember that we're all interconnected and rely upon one another for not only survival but thriving here on this planet Earth. So let's begin by closing our eyes. You can bring the hands to rest on the knees, palms up to the sky in a receptive fashion, and take notice of your breath. Feel the muscles in the face relax. Constrict the back of the throat ever so slightly to lengthen and deepen the breath. Imagine from the lower portion of your body roots growing, extending into the soil beneath you and intermingling with all those other roots that share the soil. From this root network, your spine grows tall and strong, like the trunk of a tree. And your head is light, just like a nest in the crook of a branch. Continue to focus on your breathing. Bring all your awareness there as you visualize. The head is so light that it's hard to discern where the head ends and the sky begins. You are connected to this place, to this moment. Remember that the very air you breathe is the same air that all the inhabitants of this earth breathe. That breath that fills your lungs and nourishes you. Remember that you too are a part of this earth. Your very bones are made up of minerals. And our body that is largely composed of water, that's the same water that flows in our creeks and rains down from the skies above. The same water that nourishes the animals, the plants, even the sunlight that's on you now that lifts your spirits and warms your body. That's the same sunlight that nourishes the plants that now surround you. You're all interconnected. Now listen to the sounds of your breath flowing in and out of your body. Allow your hearing to expand further out. What do you hear around you? The breeze, the birds. Listen close. What do you smell? The dirt, the leaves? What animals around you may be aware of you right now? Smell you, hear you. You are an active participant in this landscape, in this place, engaged. Feel the air on your skin. And take a deep breath. Feeling the solid earth beneath you. And when you're ready, open the eyes. And we'll take a walk now through this landscape and see what else we can discover, taking all this mindfulness and our sensory awareness with us. Now, as we walk, I want you to become aware of your surroundings and see what plant calls to you. What are you called to further take a look at and inspect? Here we've got white oak overhead. We've got white pine. Gorgeous goldenrod here in the distance. And sweet fern right beside me. Let's take a look at sweet fern. If you take a leaf of sweet fern and crush it, you're going to get a sense of its aroma. So it's sweet, kind of spicy, and sweet fern has been used by the Native Americans as a blood tonic. That's its history of use. So as a blood tonic, it would enliven the endocrine system. It would encourage the body to excrete waste products, waste chemicals. And it's also a nice digestive aid. So the way that we would use it is we'd steep it in hot water, steep the leaves in hot water for a really tasty beverage. Sweet fern is going to mostly like places where it can really get some sun. It likes a fairly open canopy and partially dry soil. Here we have white pine. White pine is a really common evergreen in our forest here in the Northeast, and actually the pine that will grow the tallest, it'll grow very tall, very fast, very straight, and for each year of growth it'll put on one whorl or circular collection of branches. So that's a neat way to figure out what the age of a white pine is, at least up to about 20 years. White pine, if you take a closer look at its needles, you'll notice that they are not individually attached to the twig, but grouped in bundles or bunches. So you're always going to have 5 needles to a bundle. Only tree in our region that will have 5 needles, so you really can't go wrong in identification. These needles are antimicrobial, diuretic, diaphoretic, vitamin C rich, and can be used as a decongestant and an expectorant when steeped in hot water for an infusion. Here we have a couple of special plants. Firstly, we've got sweet fern. So that common name can be deceptive, not actually a fern. You can see it's got a woody structure, whereas a true fern is not going to have that woody structure. This is actually a shrub and a member of the wax myrtle family. Scientific name is Comptonia peregrina. These leaves have a history of use as a blood tonic. The Native Americans, in fact, would steep them in cold water for an infusion. You could also steep them in hot water for an infusion to speed up the process a bit. Good for enlivening the body, reducing waste chemicals throughout the body. And if you take a leaf and crush it, you can really get a sense of its smell. It has a spicy, kind of sweet aroma. And as these leaves darken throughout the season, they will get spicier tasting. Just use them when they're green, not purple and past due there. Behind sweet fern, we have goldenrod. Now, goldenrod, there's a number of different species. Goldenrod too has very fragrant leaves. So again, get to know your goldenrod by just taking a leaf, crushing it up, giving it a sniff. Some are going to smell more like apple. Some will smell more like anise. Some will have a spicy sort of scent. So depending on what your goldenrod smells like, that will determine what an infusion of its leaves and or flowers may taste like. You can use that infusion to help relieve allergy symptoms. Very good for drying excess mucus and drying up watery, runny eyes. Pretty convenient that it grows this time of year for us. This plant is especially known for its velvety soft leaves. Super soft. This plant is called mullein. Scientific name is Verbascum thapsus. And what we have here are the first year rosettes, the basal rosettes. And you can see they almost look kind of rose-like in their circular arrangement. So in the second year of growth, mullein will send up a tall stalk, a leafy stalk, that can reach up to 6 feet tall, might be branching. And those can be seen after they've gone to seed, still persisting in an open field. So mullein is a non-native plant. It's originally from Europe. But we brought it over here because we considered it a valuable medicine. So the leaves of mullein can be steeped in hot water for an infusion that's very good as a moistening expectorant. The flowers of mullein, which are 5-petaled and yellow, also can be infused in an olive oil and then used as an ear oil to break up wax. And although mullein is a non-native, I don't consider it invasive. It essentially sticks to kind of those in-between places, in between civilization and wilderness, where the ground has already been disturbed or altered from its natural state. So right now, this mullein is growing in a field that has been maintained to encourage some deer browsing. And we've got some other plants here too that would encourage the deer to visit, such as Chinese chestnut and red clover. If you crack a leaf of this plant, you'll notice that it exudes a milky latex. That milky latex is what gives this plant its name. It's called milkweed. This is the common milkweed. Scientific name Asclepias syriaca. And the common milkweed, believe it or not, is a plant that has a history of use as food, despite it also having some toxicity. So this is not a beginning forager's plant, but a plant that's interesting because it kind of rides a fine line. So at the right time of year, when you harvest the correct parts, so the shoots, the flowers, or the young seed capsules, those can be boiled for about 10-15 minutes, water strained off, and then consumed. You've got to cook them to leach out the toxicity. But milkweed is probably better known nowadays as the host plant to the monarch butterfly. So the monarch relies upon milkweed to lay its eggs, also to gather nectar. The larvae require the nutrition that this plant provides, and also the protection. So that milky latex actually is a deterrent. The monarch butterfly will concentrate that toxicity inside its body, and it makes it less appetizing to its predators. So there's many ways in which the monarch needs milkweed. So if you've got milkweed growing near you somewhere, please allow it to keep growing. The seed pods too of milkweed are fascinating. They are tightly packed with these silky seeds that will act like parachutes, that silk, as they float through the air to their next destination, where they will hopefully germinate and grow new plants. Black birch is an abundant tree here in this forest. Scientific name is Betula lenta. Its leaves are sharply toothed and tend to grow in pairs, so 2 leaves coming from 1 leaf bud. However, it's not so much the leaves of black birch that are unique. The bark of black birch is unusual from other birch barks, in that it's not peeling. It's going to be largely smooth. You may find it fissured if it's an older tree, but it'll be smooth and gray with these prominent lenticels, or what look like horizontal lines in the bark, very fine. But those are not all that prominent on other kinds of trees. The inner bark and the twigs of black birch have a minty aroma. So if you were to break a twig, you could easily smell that. That minty aroma comes from the fact that this tree contains methyl salicylic acid. Methyl salicylic acid is a muscular analgesic and an anti-inflammatory. So you could make a twig tea helpful in reducing muscular aches and pains, headaches. Very easy to prepare and tasty. Black birch is also the source of our first root beers or birch beers. So what they would do is they tap this tree for its watery sap, and the sap is so watery that it takes 90 gallons to make 1 gallon of syrup. So they cook that watery sap down, and then they would ferment that with wild sarsaparilla roots and sassafras roots. And so at one time our root beer was quite literally a root beer. This plant, low to the ground, rather unassuming when it's not in fruit, is called wintergreen. And if you take a leaf, crack it, and give it a sniff, you're going to get a strong wintergreen aroma. This plant, like black birch, also contains methyl salicylic acid, giving it that minty aroma. So you could make a infusion of these leaves the same way you would black birch twigs for an analgesic or anti-inflammatory purpose. But the fruits here, the small round berries, are also edible, and they are quite tasty. They have a minty flavor, just a few hard seeds in each one. And this time of year, the wintergreen, if you flip over a leaf, you're going to notice these tiny black glandular dots, and those are not noticeable earlier in the season. Also, the edges of your wintergreen leaves, from each vein, lesser vein in that leaf, protrudes a hair. So we would say that these leaves are ciliate. Lots of wintergreen in our forest. The leaf of this plant is very leathery. If you take it between your fingers, you'll notice that. It's also fuzzy. It's covered in tiny little hairs. We call this plant trailing arbutus. Its scientific name is Epigea repens. It feels leathery because this is an evergreen plant, so this will stay green through the winter. And it's an easy plant to overlook because it's green, it's humble, and often its leaves lay flat against the soil. However, in the spring, it will put on a pale pink, cup-shaped flower, so it may catch your eye then. Its common name, trailing arbutus, speaks to the fact that these leaves contain arbutin, and therefore we could use these leaves in an infusion that would be beneficial in reducing urinary tract infection symptoms. Arbutin is a chemical that prevents the adherence of bacteria to the urinary tract lining. It's also a very astringent leaf, therefore anti-inflammatory. On our walk, we've now entered into a wetland habitat. Many wetland-loving plants. This is the Dimmock Meadow brook flowing through. And here we have a wetland-loving plant called boneset. Scientific name is Eupatorium perfoliatum. And that perfoliatum, in the scientific name, the species name, speaks to the leaf arrangement or the formation of the leaves. So you can see the leaves are either strongly clasping that central stalk, or at times they are quite literally perforated. So the stalk is going right through a leaf that is entire around that stalk. The feel of boneset's leaves are very rough, and you can see the stalk is covered in these woolly hairs. This is a member of the aster family, and boneset does have a history of use, specifically in as an antibacterial, in fighting colds and flus raising the body temperature to help break a fever. However, we have since found out that boneset does contain some toxic properties, specifically pyridoxylene alkaloids, that could over time damage the liver. So although it is an herb that has a long history of use and is still used by modern day herbalists in moderation, and when there are no existing liver conditions, one that you certainly want to be cautious with. And the parts that have been used and are used are the flowers and or the leaves. This wetland environment surrounding the Dimmock Meadow Brook is home to not only water-loving plants, but a host of amphibians and birds and insects. I don't know if you can see the dragonflies coursing around. Certainly a unique habitat. And over here we've got a witch hazel. And witch hazel does tend to like moisture environments. We are still very close to that wetland environment right now. And witch hazel is that same witch hazel that you would find in a preparation in Rite Aid or Walgreens. So witch hazel, the woody parts, so the twigs, the bark, are highly astringent, and that's essentially where their medicinal value comes from. They're naturally high in tannins, and that's what gives the bark and the twigs that astringency. We could make an infusion by simmering these twigs in hot water. That would be good topically for poison ivy or bug bites, inflammation of the skin, or internally for a sore throat, any kind of inflammation along the digestive tract. Of course, you would not do that with the preparation that you buy in the pharmacy. And the leaves of witch hazel are very distinct. Nothing else in our forest that looks like them. The edge of the witch hazel leaf is what we call scalloped. It has these rounded teeth along the outer edge. And then the base of the witch hazel leaf is asymmetrical. So you've always got one lobe that's a little bit higher than the other. And there is nothing else in our forest that looks that way. You can also remember that witch hazel is never going to be a large tree. It's actually closer to a shrub. And quite soon we will be seeing the yellow blossoms of witch hazel, which it puts on in autumn, rather, dissimilar from many other trees in our forest that are simply losing their leaves and wait until spring to flower at that time. Here at the Milford Experimental Forest, they are experimenting with the American chestnut. The American chestnut, as I mentioned before, was one of our dominant trees here in the forest at one time because of a blight. That is no longer the case. But American chestnuts are being crossed with Chinese and or Japanese chestnuts to essentially see if they can create a blight-resistant American chestnut. So behind me, there are American chestnuts here inside this enclosure. And also throughout the Milford Experimental Forest, there are a number of what we call deer exclosures, which prevent the deer from inhabiting or entering a particular patch of the forest. And what they're hoping to see there is, what amount of growth comes back when the deer are not browsing in an area. Deer, with our large population, do have the capacity to eat a lot of saplings and also delicate understory wildflowers. And so by creating those exclosures, that gives those habitats an a chance to rebound, essentially.
Thank you, Heather. We are so grateful to Heather Houskeeper for her experience and her expertise in leading us through the Milford Experimental Forest. We're also very thankful to the Pinchot family for allowing us to continue their mission of conservation education on the 1,200-acre Milford Experimental Forest just outside of Milford, PA. If you'd like to learn more about Heather, you can find her online as the Botanical Hiker. And if you'd like to learn more about the Delaware Highlands Conservancy and our land protection efforts in the Upper Delaware River region, please visit us online at delawarehighlands.org. We look forward to hiking with you in the woods next year. Until then, stay safe, get outside, and be connected.